Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Armenkov. I'm a ruling reality coach. Today is 18th of July, 2023, and I'm continuing my series, Daily Reality with Alex. Today, I would like to discuss with you a very interesting topic, and the topic is the reality of slavery. And the interesting thing is how I'm daily implementing this reality concept in my own personal practical reality. I'm going to start with one story and why slavery is so dear to my heart and how it is broadly put into my unconscious in order to be able to observe and to understand more better this fundamental principle of reality. And just for a brief purpose, I'm going to share my screen and tell you when I was 7 years old or 9-year-old, when I learned to read. This was the first book that was given to me to read from my father, and I didn't understand why I should read this book, which is full of a lot of descriptions, which is full with slavery, which is full with injustice, which gives the perspective of the slaves regarding the slavery. And this was the first impressions that came in my small mind regarding the way the society is working on, was working. And anyhow, I was very young then. I didn't understand a lot, but I knew that there was something called slavery. And from the perspective of the slave, this was not a good experience for the slave. And while sharing this story throughout of my life, now I'm 50 years old, this principle of slavery was something that was deep inside of me. Then later in life, I was really becoming more and more interested in economics, and long term, I was willing to go after and to chase towards and forward achievements. And meanwhile, I went from worker long term to becoming an entrepreneur. And the moment when I decided to move from worker to entrepreneur, and I just share it with an old guy, he said, "Oh, Alex, now you are coming on the other side. You are no more a worker, but now you are coming on and from the position of the masters." So he used for me this allegory in a more cynical way, but he used the allegory of the masters and the slaves. And of course, long term, I'm not against wealth. I'm not against anything that is anyhow allowed in our reality to exist. And that's why I was continuing to explore reality. And I'm going to give you now what is the direction between the slavery, the understanding of the principle of the master and the slave, and why and how reality is actually working. In reality, we have two definite directions. One is the above the below direction, and the other is the horizontal direction from the inside out. And in both of the direction, the principle of the master slave is working. Anyhow, the way reality is constructed, we are constantly experiencing this master-slave relationship. And when you think about slavery, and this is something new that came up to my mind, because the only thing I thought, well, slavery is something that is bad, and it is very good that all the human beings were fighting against it, and now we almost don't have slavery, and so on and so on. But of course, this is just a delusion. The master-slave principle is always going to be in existence in reality. It doesn't matter if we are now observing it more and recognizing it more or not. But the principle and the definitions behind slavery is the understanding of ownership and responsibility. Because if I don't own, if you don't own, then in a sense, we can say that you are in a slavery mode and that we are in a slavery mode. So if we want to escape the slavery principle, we are to understand the ownership principle and the responsibility principle. I know that in our mind, we are thinking that the opposite of slavery is freedom, but basically the opposite of slavery is ownership, because only if we are in ownership of resources and assets and we are ruling over them, only then it is possible for us not to be in the slavery mode. And let me tell you some very small definition about freedom and why freedom is not what we think freedom is. Because our definition for freedom is that we want to do whatever we want, of course, without taking care of the consequences. Then what more freedom is, we want all our desires to be fulfilled without having into consideration that maybe this is not the optimum that we are in necessity to have. And in one sense, our freedom of expression without considering the consequences is allowing us to enter into a slavery mode where the consequences of our actions are holding and taking over us, and we are entering into a new slavery karmic experience. On the other hand, when we allow our desires and our urges to constantly be satisfied, we are entering into another slave and mastery relationship, which is that we become slaves of the urges and slaves of the desires. And why we are to take ownership and why are we to be in a responsibility? Because only then we can be positioned as masters. And to be a ruler and to be a master, it means that under us there should be areas and realms of ownership and responsibility. So master-slave relationship is part of the vertical relationship between the above and the below. When you hear about the above, and that as it is above, so it is to be below, it is very easy this thing to become part of the master and slave relationship. Because if we say as it is above, so it is to be below, it means that we are recognizing the mastership of the above on the below. And yes, in a sense, the above realms are in a mastery towards the below realms, because the below, the so-called realm of the forms, is in a slave relationship toward the realm of the essence, the etherical realm, and the etherical realms that are in the above and that are positioned to be over the below. So once we understand that anyhow it's not possible to escape the slavery modes and the relationship which is based on ownership and responsibility, it only gives us the opportunity to allow ourselves to stay under obedience. What is the meaning of obedience? It means to recognize who and when is the master and who and when is under the government and under the authority. And anyhow, in our experience as human beings, we are constantly or on the side of the master in different particularities, or in the role of a slave. And constantly we are experiencing both of the relationships. So instead of being in a position where we are constantly claiming, blaming, and complaining about being in a slave mode, while when we are masters above some other things, we are not doing our job well, because also we don't understand how to experience the master-slave relationship. And that's why I have embraced to be a slave. Also, I have embraced in a little and different specific areas to be a master. It is important, of course, as a disclaimer purposes, because I'm Christian. For me, it's very important to say, well, I am a slave to my Lord and Savior. And through this, I'm declaring a lot of big and mighty things into reality, but also I'm claiming that I'm not owning everything, that I know where my place is, and that I understand the below and the above principle. Because when we speak about the quantum reality and about the wave collapsing principle, and that we, through our will, have a possibility to collapse the wave, have a possibility to turn potential into experience, we are to understand that the quantum reality is not working only in the horizontal level, and it is not only in a relationship to the solipsism of me against and towards the outer reality, but the quantum reality and field is also working based on the above and the below principle. So if we are not able and willing to be good slaves, in a sense, understanding authority, understanding governmental principle, understanding what is the meaning of being in obedience, we are not able to experience ownership, responsibility, and the mastery principle, where we are also to master. So anyhow, in the construct of reality, the principles are always working in both directions. If you want to rule, you are to be ruled. If you want to experience freedom, we are to experience the opposite of freedom. And that's why reality is constantly balancing the duality and constantly balancing the opposites in order the paradoxes that are the building blocks of reality to be able to exist and to give us the reality experience that is first balanced, then it is the one that we need. And third, that is encouraging our internal essence to be able to be expressed, because all of us are speaking constantly about unconditional love, which in reality does not exist, because love is able to exist only if it's put under order within a construct. And constructs are never unconditional. That's why in the relationship, in the ratios principles, in the construct principles, all of us, it doesn't matter what type of entities we are, it doesn't matter if we speak only about the human entities or we speak about all the entities that are in existence. The important thing is to know that no one in reality is possible to be only in a position of a master without knowing what is the meaning of a slave also, and to be under obedience. And then, of course, we can go into discussion, well, but Alex, maybe the almighty, all existing, the so-called God that is above everything, and it is beyond the creation. Maybe he is the only master that is beyond everything, and nobody is over him. In a sense, maybe this is truth, maybe, and of course, there should be this absolute, but even the biggest absolute in reality is, in a sense, making and made the decision to be in an interaction with its creation in such a sense that the creators are the slaves of their creation. So these master-slave relationships are always into existence and experience. Of course, the creator of everything is constantly engaged into governance, ownership, and having the responsibility about all of the creation, the way it is going to evolve, and all the cycles and ages it is going to be transformed from towards. And that's why, from the perspective of us as a human beings, as a small specks, put into the specificality of the creation principle in the specific ages and moving to the bigger transformational principle that are even beyond us, even for us is better to stay only in our positioning, only in our ownership, only in our responsibilities, where we are able to actually perform, instead of going into a constant oblivion where we are starting to lose our action, to lose our ability to impact, into influence in our realm of experience and probabilities, because we are so far away into what is not part of what we are destined to be, to do, and to express. And because of this, I'm now using strongly into my reality this master principle. I know there are some things that are put under me, and there I have big responsibility, but also I'm urging all of you and all of us to understand the principle of ownership. Because if I speak about financial slavery and financial mastery, for example, it is not possible mastery to exist if we don't embrace the ownership principle. And in the financial reality, we are to own. And the problem of the human being, and that's why we are constantly moving and going into financial slavery. And this is how we are also enticed towards, because when we say, oh, Alex, that is so wonderful, I want to own watches, I want to own phones, I want to own, I want to consume, I want things. And basically, what we are doing in this direction, we are gathering more and more ownership of things that we consume and that need to be sustained, and there are more costs coming out with them And basically, through this principle of ownership of the wrong things, because we are thinking about ourselves and about what are our urges, how we want to grab from reality and to take for ourselves and to make our ego to grow because we own, then basically we are entering into a slavery mode. And now I'll give you the better way and the way that is working through me and with me and by me, and it is also based on the ownership principle, but now I'm collecting and owning basically the right things. But Alex, what are you owning? Of course, I'm owning assets that are producing more financial results for me and for all my ecosystem that I'm owning and governing and stewarding. And I'm creating more and more wealth and abundance that is constantly creating more and more mastery over more and more assets. And now there are so many things, so many people that are working under me. Does it mean that I'm a direct master to those people and they're directly my slaves? No. But what I'm meaning that when we are focusing on the ownership and stewardship of the right things, then because we cannot consume the assets, we cannot consume the things that are producing for all the society, then we are not grabbing out from reality and consuming it, but we are basically taking things and taking care of things in reality that are constantly growing and growing and benefiting more and more of the human beings if they're, of course, used in the right way, because all of us can give the example with the 1% and we can start blaming the 1% that they are owing maybe 60% of all the financial assets of the world. And we say, well, Alex, you see, now they are our masters and we are their slaves. But in a sense, every master, even whatever he owns, he has a constant responsibility of stewardship under what is the ownership. So the first principle is what you own in reality defines if you are a master or a slave. Then, Alex, you can ask me, but are you a non-consummating being? What are you consuming more than a normal person? Maybe you are consuming 10 times more than a normal person or 20 times more than a normal person. Maybe you are constantly after luxury things. Maybe you are having yachts and things like this, and all the so-called American dream, which is to be surrounded with a lot of luxury things. Is this what you're after? No. For example, when I am consuming, I always come from the perspective of the asset principle. For example, this watch, it costs something like 2,000 or 3,000 euro. And this watch, when I took it because it is not losing its value. So it's transferring the value from, let's say, it was bought in 2016 or maybe 2010. I don't remember, but maybe something like 2009 or 10, actually. And today its value is almost the same, or let's say slightly the same. So it means that I am using this asset, but it is not losing its value. So some of the things that I'm using, they are stores of value and they're transferring the value for me. So instead of consuming, I have just kept this value for the last 20 years. Can I liquidate it and turn it into different things that are going to create new assets? Yes. Then the other thing about cars, that we are constantly after luxury cars, And of course, I also have BMWs in our company. We have Audis, we have Mercedes, and so on and so on. But what we are looking from the perspective of assets is how little from the value it is lost, because of course we are using them for purposes that are creating additional money. So in a sense, we are using these cars as a tools. We are not using these cars in order to show off, in order just to be more than a normal vehicle, but also we are constantly monitoring the amortization principle and how much of the value it is holding. And of course, long term, there are assets that are nice toys that can be used for store of value. And this is part of the consummational principle. And when we say, well, Alex, but you know, when we don't have money, we are eating so many cheap things, and the rich people, they're eating so many beautiful and very expensive organic food. And for example, if a normal person in the developing world is using something like $500 to $1,000 for food, and maybe per person it's less than $500 for food per month, the rich guys maybe use $10,000 per food per month per person. But then we are also need to put into consideration, when they're using this $10,000 of food, if they eat special food and it is creating in them more energy, and this is giving them a better brain function in order to master and to rule over their assets, and they're living maybe 20 years longer than the normal person that is eating $500 per month of food, and if their lifestyle is much more healthier than ours, then maybe from their perspective, it is making sense for them to use more money, because they have a different ecosystem, they have a different way of approaching to their wealth and abundance, and they're stewards, and they have people under them, and they have their own masters. So in a sense, we are not to judge the slavery and the mastery modes of the others. What we are to observe constantly in reality, our own personal slavery and mastery modes, and to learn how to rule them and how not to go against. I'm never going to be against the taxational principle of the governments that are giving to the entities that are below them. Because the purpose of the governments, the purpose of the structures that are governing all of us, is to create beneficial environment for all of us. And of course, some of us can say, well, but Alex, this is not the truth. All the elites, everything is going against us, and so on and so on. So we are against the governments, we are against taxes, and so on. If we go into this direction, it means that we are against the principles that are working in reality. It is so easy to be grateful and to stay in gratitude for things which we accept. But we are to accept reality as it is. If this governmental structure and institutions are there already allowed in reality to exist, we are to honor them, and we are to pay what is due to them in order to be able, a reality to allow us to move, because we are now recognizing the mastery and the slavery relationships, and this is the only way we are to move in the realm of the forms. Of course, for all of us that are the spiritual people that want to go beyond this world, that are not interested at all in what is happening in this reality that we are daily in, are forced to experience, to all of us, the spiritual ones, I would like to say that as a contrast, it is basically interesting and wonderful to start understanding why the construct in reality, in the visible part of reality, in the reality of forms is working the way it is, because then it is giving us the connection back towards the above and towards the realm of essence, because we cannot understand ourselves, we cannot understand the source, we cannot understand the essence if we are not able to perform and to be in this reality. If we are not entering the interactional mode of accepting everything that is, and to be willingly putting our forces into this existence, we are not going to understand the behind the scene, we are not going to understand the above, we are not going to open ourselves towards everything that is out there in reality. If we want to understand the macrocosmos, if we want to understand what is the spirituality, what are the real things that are happening behind the scene, we are to better start observing what is obvious and what is constantly happening before us on a daily basis. So this is a very small way of practically giving you some understanding how the principles that are working in reality are to be actually used, are to be actually honored. And for all of us, it is much more better to start understanding everything that we are not actually willing to move towards. Yes, this is where the beauty in reality lays, in the things that we are not willing to approach and to look upon. I know all of us want to look towards the light. All of us wants to look towards the beautiful. All of us wants to look toward the truth. All of us are above these high values. But in order to be able to know all of this, we are first to acknowledge and to start grasping and to start interacting with what is. What is giving us the door towards the absolute. So thank you for watching. Enjoy your reality. Be enthusiastic about all the limitations that reality is giving to you, because these are so wonderful doors. These are so wonderful nuggets that can give us so much awareness about what is our deepest desire and meaning and purpose of understanding and know and willing to know the unknown, the invisible, and the absolute, of knowing and willing to grasp the source principle. So enjoy your reality and continue striving forward, and just allow the slave and master principle to work in your reality. Bye-bye.